Hello, everyone. Welcome to P&P Live. My name is Margaret Orto, and I'm the events coordinator in the Children and Teens Department of Politics and Prose. Thank you so much for joining us tonight and tuning into this format where we continue to bring authors and new books to you. I have the pleasure of introducing our event this evening, and I'm delighted to welcome our guests, Elly Swartz and Dr. Kathleen Trainor, for a discussion of Elly's newest book, Dear Student. Before introductions, a few housekeeping notes. Please note that we have closed captioning for anyone who would like that option. Just click the live transcript button at the bottom of your screen. Tonight, you can ask our panelists a question by clicking Q&A located at the bottom of your screen. You can also vote on your favorite questions, and at the end, we'll have time to go over some together. And last but not least, you can click the link we will drop in the chat box to get your own copy of Dear Student. Now on to introductions. Elly Swartz grew up in Yardley, Pennsylvania, where she lived a happy childhood filled with laughs, family dinners, and crooked birthday cakes. She studied psychology at Boston University and received a law degree from Georgetown University School of Law. Her previous work includes Finding Perfect, Smart Cookie, and Give and Take. Her newest book for preteens, Dear Student, is a powerful and relatable story about overcoming fear and standing up for what you believe in. In conversation with Elly tonight is Dr. Kathleen Trainor. Dr. Trainor is the founder of the Trainor Center, which treats children and adolescents with anxiety-based disorders using the latest in evidence-based approaches. A senior psychologist formerly on the staff of the Child Psychiatry Clinic at Massachusetts General Hospital, Dr. Trainor holds a master's degree in social work and a doctorate in clinical psychology. She had been on the Harvard faculty for over 25 years. And now I'm excited to turn the event over to Elly and Kathleen. Take it away.
Margaret, thank you so much for having us. Politics and Prose, thank you. And thank you, friends, for joining us. And thank you to Dr. Trainor for saying yes.
Of course. So Elly, I thought maybe we could start with you talking a little bit about your journey in terms of the writing of this book, what gave you the impetus to do it, and how you developed it. I know that we went back and forth about it, but there was, I think writing any book is a journey. So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, thank you. First, I'll rewind the clock a little bit. Before Dear Student, for anybody who's here and doesn't know, my journey to yes, my writing journey in total, was not, somebody recently said, oh my God, you like broke it onto the scene like overnight, which made me laugh. My journey was very long and winding. It was 15 years to yes. It was hundreds of rejections. Finding Perfect was my first yes, but it was the 5th book I wrote. So during that time, when I visit schools, a student raised his hand and he's like, Elly, it was great that you persevered, but why? And it was a great question, because rejection at my age, it's not like I've gotten really good at it. I mean, it's not like I've gained a skill in rejection. So I had to think about it. And it turns out that I love writing more than I hate rejection. And I hope that students and readers find the thing that they love so much that no and not yet doesn't knock them off their path. As far as this book was a journey. You know, some books kind of roll out of you. This book was very much a labor of love. When I first started writing this story, it's about Autumn, who has social anxiety, a pet guinea pig named Spud, because he looks like a giant baked potato, and she becomes the secret voice of the middle school advice column. I knew the beginning of the story. I knew the end of the story. And when I was making my outline, the entire middle, I wrote, something great happens here. I just didn't know what it was going to be. So it really was, the writing was very much a discovery process for me. And in that discovery process, I found Autumn's heart. And she is inspired by so many of the kids that I have met in schools who say, write about me, but kids who feel that they don't fit, kids who feel that they, are they wearing the right clothes? Are they saying the right thing? Are they doing the right thing? Are kids going to think they're weird? The kids who have that constant loop in their head. But I feel like all kids are like that at times. I feel like we're all like that, right? Like moments where you feel like you just don't fit, whether you have social anxiety or not. And this book was also a tribute to, I guess, the kids, some of them on the flip side of the coin, the kid activists, because there is an activist portion of this book where Autumn does find her voice and what she believes in and what is worth fighting for. And so those kids, the kids who either find their voice or know what they want from the beginning, those, the kid activists today are incredibly inspiring. So I feel like it was both the kids who are finding their voice and kids who know their voice that really inspired the heart of Autumn's journey.
I think one of the things that you said that I think is important to stress is that a lot of kids have some level of social anxiety. And part of all kinds of anxiety is pretty normal. It's when it gets to be more severe and it really interferes with what you want to do, which is what was happening for Autumn.
Right.
Go ahead.
No, I mean, I think you're right. Like the opportunity for kids to see that whether you're diagnosed with social anxiety or not, we all have those moments. And so that ability for all readers to sort of relate to Autumn in not just empathy for another, but also recognizing themselves in that situation. So I feel like it really promotes both the empathy and the own self-discovery at the same time, which I think is really important for kids to realize. You don't have to be diagnosed with social anxiety to feel anxiety, and that it's okay to have moments where you're not okay. Like you're going to get to the other side.
And sometimes it's more than moments. But even then, I think it's important I know in my work, to normalize anxiety and normalize anxiety disorders, because millions of kids have anxiety disorders. I mean, it's extremely common. And the kids that I see are often extremely high functioning kids, but they have pockets of anxiety. And the anxiety can be treated and they can get over it so that they can do the kinds of things that they want to do, but anxiety is getting in their way.
I love what you talked about, the normalization. And you and I have spoken about that. And I feel that for me, one of the things, the impetus in telling stories where characters have mental health challenges is to normalize all of it. I travel around, I talk to kids, and I hear things like, well, I didn't want to tell anybody because I was embarrassed. And I didn't want to say anything because kids would think I was weird and stop being friends with me. Like, that's not okay with me. That's not okay that kids feel shame about mental health challenges. We all are working on something. So a book can be a way in. It can be a way for kids to see that they are not alone. A book can give kids the language that they need to say what's going on, because sometimes I hear, I didn't even know what to call it. I didn't even know what was happening to me. And it normalizes the opportunity. It just gives the kids the opportunity to start having a conversation about mental health that doesn't have to be hushed, that doesn't have to be away from others. It can be a conversation that's shared in a community that feels safe and supported, like school. I mean, that's a great opportunity to talk about these things and to have that be more like, I need glasses, or I broke my arm and I need a cast, as opposed to something that they're so embarrassed to talk about that they won't get help. If you normalize it and give them the language and the courage, the opportunity and the support, then they're likely to get the help they need from people like yourself. And that can get them to the other side of okay. They can just, that the feeling of not being okay, it can bridge that gap and get them to the other side.
And I think this also expands to parents, because sometimes kids are afraid to tell their parents that they need or want help. And parents may communicate a certain level of stigma about anxiety disorders and seeing a therapist. So I think that's also another important message, that we need to normalize it, and parents need to feel normalized if their child is dealing with anxiety. It often runs in families.
Right. I think that's a really good point. I think, especially because a lot of, parents are from different generations, right, than their children, and mental health was treated or was viewed differently at all different times in history. And hopefully acceptance and normalization we're moving in that direction. And so you need not just the child, but the family to come on that journey with them. And books can help. I have been, kids have reached out to me, parents have reached out to me, teachers have reached out to me about the impact my books have had on kids and families. But you're right, it needs to be that supportive community that allows kids to feel safe to have those conversations.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, because I see so many kids who don't feel comfortable sharing these kinds of issues with others. And they say that I felt this way for years. And it's only until it gets really bad that then they have to seek help. Whereas it would be nicer if kids felt like they could get help and talk about these things way before it became a big problem.
Right. I mean, I feel very honored that students, readers, have reached out to me after reading my books, whether it's Finding Perfect with OCD, Give and Take with Hoarding, Smart Cookie with Grief, or Dear Student Now with social anxiety. Students have and adults have reached out, and I had one of the most impactful moments for me, because it was a first. When Finding Perfect came out, a student reached out and sent me a letter and said, Dear Elly, I just want you to know that you changed my life. And this student went on to say that she felt weird like Molly. She was scared like Molly, that she did stuff like, things that she didn't know how to control like Molly, and she didn't tell anybody like Molly. And she felt really alone until she met Molly. And then she reached out and told her parents what was going on and got treated for OCD and is doing great. Like, kids can get to the other side of whatever it is that they're going through. That. That's what you do. Books can be the catalyst to bring kids to you, bring kids, talk to their parents, talk to their teachers, and get to that other side.
Yeah, books can be extremely intimate, because kids have the capacity to absorb themselves in a book.
Right.
And that can be a very powerful instrument.
Right. And, they talk about books being windows, mirrors, and doors. And you're right. The intimacy that you bring to the page when you see yourself or you see somebody, that kind of private moment when you're reading can really be a catalyst for self-reflection and moments of, oh my God, I do this, or that's what that's what this is called, or she's doing, I didn't know anybody else did this. I get a lot of that. I get a lot of messages where kids say, I recently got a direct message from a reader in Iran who read Give and Take and said, I didn't know that anybody did this. I didn't know that kids did this stuff. I thought it was just me. I mean, kids and books can be that connection. And I'm hoping with Dear Student, as you said, anxiety, particularly with the pandemic, is so elevated. Kids, adults, we all have those moments where it's felt really intense. And I'm hoping that Dear Student can be a friend to those readers when they're having a hard time.
Well, the pandemic certainly has isolated kids in a way that they've never been isolated before. And socially engaging with others has been a challenge through the pandemic. So I think, reading has been something that a lot of kids have done more of. I mean, certainly they've been on screens more, and that's much more than reading, but they have also read more because they have been so isolated for such an extensive period of time.
But you raised a really interesting point that I hadn't really made the connection until now, when you said that kids have been so isolated, which obviously we're remote learning, remote living, that re-entry back into school, back into social situations. And somebody had reached out recently about it, and I just didn't put it together, but that re-entry heightens the whole, social anxiety. It brings it to another level because we've been tucked in at home, which has had its own challenges, right? But now you're re-entering back into school, you're re-entering back into that social situation. So whether you have social anxiety or you had it before, I'm certain that there are moments that all of us, whether I was just reading about, you're going back to school visits as an author, you're going back into your office, kids are going back into school. We all have those moments of trepidation where we're uncertain of ourselves and feel anxious. And I hope in those moments that Autumn in Dear Student can be a friend to say, it's okay to not be okay. Like, you're going to get there. Like, we all feel this sometimes. And Prisha, her best friend, who says, just be you, whatever that is. And so I think it's important to remember that it's okay to not be okay.
Certainly through this time with the pandemic, where there have been so many transitions and so many ups and downs and expectations that kids have had and then been disappointed about. So it has been extremely stressful for kids.
Yeah. And, I want to also thank you. I don't know if the people who are tuned in know, but Dr. Trainor is the therapist that I have worked with on all of my books. Authenticity is really important. I do have anxiety myself, but I doesn't manifest the way it manifests in my characters. I'm not my characters. So it was really important to me, whether it was OCD or hoarding or social anxiety, to make sure that I'm honoring my readers and those who have whose anxiety does manifest in that way, that it's accurate and authentic. And Dr. Trainor has been huge in helping me make sure that the books and their main characters are credible and true to what they're going through. And I'm really grateful to your input.
Thank you. I'm happy to do it. I'm very happy to do it. Do you spend a lot of time with kids of this age group? I mean,
Yeah.
independent of the books, in terms of your life, independent of readers.
Well, it depends what stage of my journey. So my kids are now 29 and 26. So when I'm hanging out with them and their friends, they're not in middle school anymore. They were in middle school. and elementary school when I started this journey in 2001. So I had plenty of time surrounded by middle schoolers and elementary kids. And now I spend a lot of time virtually now because of the pandemic. And I just had my first in-person visit at a school on Tuesday when Dear Student came out, which just filled my heart. That energy is amazing. So I am with kids a lot. It's usually now tied into when I'm at schools. But the amazing thing about kids that age, which is why I love writing for them, I love being with them, is that they are honest and they are willing to share with me. I find it to be such a privileged position that I get up and speak to, 500 fifth graders or sixth graders or fourth graders. And afterwards, kids come up and share with me the most vulnerable moments that they have anxiety, that kids make fun of them, that they feel alone or they're crying. And they share with me because I've given them a safe place. They recognize my characters and they feel safe talking to me, which I feel is a truly privileged position to be in. And I honor that and try to honor them and what they're going through. But I'm grateful that they are so willing to share and they're so honest, which I love.
Yes, and some of them, it's just moments of anxiety. Others need more help with their anxiety.
Right.
And I think that that's something that your books illustrate. Some of the characters get help and then get better and then move on. And I think that's a good message for kids, that it's okay to need help. It's okay to see a therapist. It doesn't mean that you're crazy or there's something terribly wrong with you. And anxiety can be treated. It's very treatable.
I love that, Dr. Trainor, because I think that is so important in give and take and in finding perfect, both of those main characters, Maggie and Molly. The therapist, as you know, as somebody who helped me with them, is an integral part of their discovery and working through their anxiety. And in Dear Student, the anxiety is on the continuum, right? She's not seeing a therapist at this moment. She's able to work through it, talking about it and working through it on her own. But I think it's really important, as you said, to normalize it, to make sure that kids know you can see a therapist. People see therapists. The more we talk about it, the more we talk about it in school, the more we talk about it at the dinner table, the more it's not a big deal. You go see a therapist, you get the tools you need in your toolbox, and you move on. And that's why, for me, my books, I try end hopeful. It's really important to me that they're not neatly tied up in a bow. Like, not everything is, rainbows and unicorns, because that's not life. And that would be disrespectful to my readers if I suggested that OCD or hoarding or socializing, everything, life just neatly wraps up, because that's not how it works. But I do believe that there is always hope, and that ending the books on a hopeful note is very important to me. Because, as you said, there are moments when you're not okay, but you move forward from those moments and you get to that place of hopefulness, which I think is incredibly important for readers and kids to see that hopefulness, like, you can get there. There's a bridge.
Again, I think books can be powerful both in terms of giving kids hope, as well as, I think some of the books that kids read can also do the opposite. They can make them feel more hopeless, because books are powerful. So, and teenagers and young, tweens can just absorb things like a sponge. They lose perspective very easily. So if they're in the world of a book that's very filled with hopelessness or depressing themes, it impacts them. Versus a book that is more hopeful, that impacts them more than adults.
It's interesting. As a therapist, you have a very unique perspective on the way readers absorb information at this age. For me, I do feel like it's so important. I mean, hopefulness, it's also why I write for this grade, because I don't know, it's kind of my jam. That's how I view the world. That's who I am in the world. That if I'm being authentic, if I'm writing from that really authentic place from my heart, that's who I am. I'm somebody who is hopeful. I believe in the journey of my characters. I believe it's okay to have moments where you're feeling all the feels, where you're scared, where you're anxious. And then you have moments where knowing that you can move forward from that. That hopefulness is really important for me to communicate in all of my stories, that kids can get to that point. And I think it's really important to share that.
I think that's a nice note to open it up to the audience to see if there are any questions from anybody.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, but no, let's go. Thanks to both of you for this, for launching this conversation, this important conversation. It's still not too late to put questions in. We are getting questions. Before we get started, though, Elly, if you don't mind, I just had two questions on my end.
Sure.
Just to dig a little bit deeper into the characters in your new book, and Dear Student, because I don't want to give spoilers, but if you would maybe just talk a little bit about the father character in the book, and kind of just for the audience, it's a complicated situation, and the characters are complicated, including the father, including the mother, and everyone's having feelings. But if I just thought the father is absent, but it's a very unique reason, and I thought if you could just speak to that a moment.
Sure. It's well, thank you, because I feel like the stories that I write reflect kids' lives that are complicated, right? That are layered. So Autumn's dad leaves the family to volunteer for the Peace Corps. That's hard for Autumn. He feels like he is leaving to make a difference in the world, that this takes courage. He sees the day. He's going to make a difference. And Autumn's heart is broken because what he doesn't realize is that he doesn't have to leave to make a difference. He can stay right where he is and make a difference for her and her little sister Pickle. The family needs to move to which is no spoilers, to an apartment above her mom's veterinary clinic. The mom plays a big role, and Autumn's best friend Prisha has moved away. She's in California, but plays again. And you hear the dad via the dad's presence via video calls and postcards he sends. You hear Prisha's conversations via text messages and emails that they correspond. And then Autumn's new friends could not be more different. Logan is like a spunky advocate. She's an activist, like for when she was 9, advocating for like a later bedtime. And Autumn thinks that she is like the bravest, coolest person, most amazing person she's ever met. I mean, and this person wants to be friends with her, and this person has a pregnant python. So like, there's that. So, and Logan's mom is a women's rights activist and is gone a lot for work. People being left can feel a lot. And Cooper is the other friend, quiet, strong, has a single mom. All of them feel left for very different reasons. Some of them, and none of them on the surface, volunteering for the Peace Corps, being a rights activists working hard to do great in the world. Those are not bad things. Those are great things, but it doesn't mean that there aren't aspects of them that can hurt their kids' hearts. So it explores the notion of what it means to be left. And it explores the notion of what home means to each one of them. And so I love that part because those concepts are shared, but they're manifested in very different ways. And none of them see how alike they are. They don't have that appreciation for it because they feel that their circumstances are also different.
Oh, no, thank you for that. That's really a beautiful answer. It really, the nuance of the characters was really quite wonderful. And just one other quick question, if you could just get into the other piece of the story a little bit about the social activism part of the story.
Sure. So I do love this part of the book. There is a cosmetic company that's moving into town and providing a whole lot of jobs in the area. I can't give you all the details of it because there would be a spoiler, but there is a cosmetic company that comes in, and that cosmetic company tests on animals like cosmetic companies do to ensure the safety of their products. And well, Logan is an animal buff, and so is Autumn. Autumn, her mom is a vet. So the fact that this cosmetic company is coming and testing on animals is outrageous to them. So there is, again, I'll leave parts of it out, but there is a march that happens. And Autumn gives advice as a dear student that kind of puts her squarely unknowingly in the middle of Cooper, one of her new best friends, and Logan. And she has to find her voice to figure out, is she going to stand beside her convictions? And what if she's so confused that doing the right thing in her heart and mind is not easy, because no matter what she does, she's going to hurt somebody she cares about. And that is very confusing, not just for kids, but for adults, right? Like doing the right thing can be complicated. And so sometimes the best answer is doing what's true to you, where you can stay true to who you are, that you are being true to the things you believe in, and then respecting others, listening to others, and being kind to others, even if you totally disagree, and that you can still be friends with somebody, even if you disagree with them. So the activism piece has a lot of those components in it that I do love. And as a person who really, a pet person, that was really important to me. And the cool thing is the Humane Act is a bill that's proposed in Congress now that is to limit the ability of cosmetic companies to test on animals. So if teachers are out there and they're doing, units on, proposing laws, like it just was so relevant and current to something that is actually going on right now. So that was like such a happy find when I was researching.
Yeah. Oh, so cool. That's great.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, let me get over to the audience questions. A question from Lisa. How have your visits to schools impacted your life professionally and personally?
Oh my God, they have filled my life with such immense joy. Like my whole heart just expands walking into, whether it is a classroom, a book club, or a auditorium filled with 600 students. It doesn't matter. The energy and the heart and the honesty is just the best. It has changed my life profoundly for the better.
Oh, that's great. We have a question from Nicole, and she's asking, have you ever considered writing a picture book focusing on mental health topics?
I have been working on picture books for a while now, years actually. I've written a lot of them, and they all still stink so far. So I am really trying. It is not that I don't want it. I just haven't gotten there yet. But stay tuned. It will happen. Look, it took me 15 years to get my first middle grade published. I really don't give up that easily. So it will happen. Just not quite yet.
Well, you have yourself a challenge.
Exactly. Yes, I have taken it as a challenge.
Oh, yes. And a question from Jack. Do you draw on personal experience for the topics of your books? Have you had bouts with anxiety, OCD, and other topics that you write about? And, feel free to, not have to be specific.
No, I understand. There's a line between personal and
right.
And sharing. What I can share with you, Jack, is I do have anxiety. It's something I navigate. I work through. At times it feels more like it's tapping me on the shoulder, and at times it's fine. I am not my characters. I'm not any of my characters, but every single emotion in all of my books is mine. So all of that emotional resonance, all of that content, whether it's fear, anxiety, worry, love, joy, those are my feelings. And there are sprinklings of my experiences throughout my work, because I feel like it's so important for me to write from that space of authenticity that inevitably you're going to touch into your own experiences, but I'm not my characters. And so we're clear, because students have asked this. My friends and family are not the characters in my book, because I think people would just stop hanging out with me if every time I was with them, they then ended up on the page. But the characters that are on the page for my real life are pets. We did have an African pygmy hedgehog, guinea pig, dogs. We haven't had a snake. A pregnant python was kind of where I drew the line as parent, but we have a lot of pets. So those get in the book, but not the people.
That's great. I love it. A question from Rita. How have students expressed their personal experiences with mental health to you?
They've been incredibly honest. And as I shared, I find it to be an incredibly privileged position to receive that information. I have been told that, they told me they have OCD. I was at a school in Chicago. There was a girl who was crying, came up to me afterwards, and she shared that she was scared and she has anxiety and she has OCD, and she has a really hard time. And I told her she was incredibly brave, and that, had she talked to somebody, and she said she did, and she's getting help. And I told her she's going to get to the other side. I mean, there are these conversations, whether it's OCD or depression, bouts of suicidal ideology, kids have shared with me, and it makes me really emotional. It's a huge privilege to be a safe space for somebody else. So
yeah, Elly, we appreciate you doing that.
Thank you.
And understand how that would be an emotional.
Yeah.
Place.
So this is why I do what I do.
Let's switch to a different, let's talk about the writing process. And we have a question from Lisa about that. What has been the most difficult part of the writing process for you? And what are some of the strategies you use to overcome those challenges?
I think for me, when I don't have brain space, and so it's hard for me to write. And so what I mean by that is, if my brain is filled with worry or anxiety or frustration or the pandemic, COVID, all the things that went with that, or somebody in my life is having a hard time, it's very hard for me to be creative. Creativity requires space. It needs to breathe. It needs to have space to like anchor and bloom. And if my brain is crowded, there's no space for that. So what I do is, when I do my writing workshops with students, I share with them that I need brain space. And so do they. Like the things they're excited about, the homework they did, the stuff they forgot to do, the chores, they got to push that all away. I walk my dogs in the morning. That's a strategy I use. And then I make all the kids get up and we dance together, because that's also something I do. And if you don't have dogs, you can try that. You can do jumping jacks. You can shoot hoops, listen to music, whatever helps you disengage from the things that are crowding your brain. So for me, that's probably the single biggest hurdle. And also just being kind to yourself, right? If it's a day that it's not happening, then it's okay. It's just not happening. Like, just give yourself a break and recognize that, tomorrow's a new day, or later you can try again. But just recognizing that you just can't beat yourself up about it. You got to just give yourself a little bit of kindness and a bit of a break.
Wonderful. Yes. Lisa just wrote, that's such great advice for teachers, brain space. So thank you. Now a question from Nicole is, which character was your favorite to create?
Oh my God. I love that question. I don't know that I have a favorite. I feel like each one of them came to me for a reason, and each one resonates with me in a very different way, and hopefully resonates with the readers in a very different way. I feel like they've each tapped into something in me that I don't know if I needed at the time, if I needed to connect with at the time, work through, I'm not sure. But I feel like each one of them brought something different to not just my writer life, but my life. Because to write about these characters, they have to become real, like real people in my heart and in my head. So I feel like they add something to my each one of them has sort of added something to me by creating them and creating their story. So I connect with each one of them in a pretty different way. I mean, Autumn was my pandemic character, and I connected with her in a lot of ways as we all were working through this very crazy upside down time. Molly was, she was the first one that got my yes. So that, has a very special place. But each one of them, Frankie was smart cookie. I lost my mom early, and so did Frankie. And she needed to find her herd, and I think I did too. So I feel like each one of them connects with me in different ways. I love them all. I actually want them all to come for Thanksgiving.
Let's see. I think we just got a couple of new questions in. Let me just make sure. I think we had a response from Elly. I think I lost it though. That she said. So one of them, Molly is my favorite. Perfect answer. Oh. There we go. From Ligia, congratulations, Elly. What draws you to write for this age group? And do you ever think about reworking your early unpublished novels?
Well, two answers to that. What draws me to the age group is I really feel like it chose me. Those 4 early novels prior to Finding Perfect explored other genres and other age groups. One was a YA, one was a fantasy. And I realized that even the YA, the main character still sounded like they were 12. They just had like YA issues. Like, I really believe like I have a 12-year-old like broadcasting from inside me. And that's just my wheelhouse. So, I feel like if you're writing really authentically, you're like listening to, you're not trying to be a different type of writer. You're listening to the writer, you're like a muse for the voices inside you. Thank God I'm a writer. I don't know what I would do with those voices in my head. So I think for me, I felt like middle grade chose me. It really is my wheelhouse. As far as reworking the earlier, so happily to share, the first book I ever wrote was in 2001. It was called Hidden Truths. It is coming out in 2023. And it only took 22 years to get it right. So yes, I reworked it. I mean, some of the other ones I don't know that I would go back to, but I mean, there are stories that stick with you that you just can't walk away from. And those are the ones that I've gone back to. And Hidden Truths was one of them. Yeah, there's some stories you just can't walk away from. You just feel like there is something about them that it connects you to the characters, connects you to the story, connects you to like the heart of the character's journey. And you just can't walk away. And so I didn't. And so Hidden Truths will come out in 2023.
That's fabulous. We do have a comment from the audience that says, yay, wow, that's amazing. So exciting for Hidden Truths. So we have some fans already. I guess just to wind down the presentation, I guess, Elly, you've talked a little bit about some upcoming projects, but I wonder if both of you could talk to some other things that you're working on or looking forward to in the next 6 months to a year.
I can say, I mean, I am so excited that Dear Student is out there, and I cannot wait to be back in schools. Tuesday was such a heartprint moment, like being in a school. So I'm very excited to be back in bookstores, to be back in schools, to be back with teachers, collaborating at conferences and be back with other writers. Like I miss that very, very much, that sense of connectivity in person, that energy. I'm working on, Hidden Truths. I just turned in my revisions, so that's coming. And I have a new middle grade that I'm really excited about writing. I just need brain space. So that'll happen. And I'm working on not stinking at picture books.
Wonderful.
So Dr. Trainor, what about you?
I am continuing to work, and I have a book out for parents, Calming Your Anxious Child.
And it's amazing.
So I have thoughts of writing another book too, probably for parents as well, because I feel strongly that parents are the key to helping their kids.
Oh, thank you for that. That is unfortunately all the time we have, and I think we've covered a lot of ground. I really appreciate you both being here this evening, and thanks to the audience for the great questions. Congratulations on the publication of Dear Student. And just for the audience members, it's not too late. We have the purchase link put into the chat. And if you're local, we have it at the store. So please come in or call us or order it on our website. I think that about wraps up our evening.
Oh, and if you get it, if you end up ordering the book from Politics and Prose, I will send signed book plates. So
that's wonderful. Thank you.
Just a heads up.
That's great. Wonderful. All right. I think we're gonna call it a close for the evening.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you guys for coming.